Greetings, interminglers. Welcome back. Today, what I thought I would talk about is building a strong foundation. Like any good thing, if we want it to last, we have to build it off of a strong foundation. So today's project I'm going to work on is starting one of the intermingled uh, mesh crochet blocks, such as this is the papillon block, which is available on the Etsy site with its graphs and so forth. Let me very quickly show you how virtually all of my patterns are laid out right now so that we can start on the foundation very quickly. I'd like to try to keep my videos, relatively brief, no more than 20, hopefully no more than 20 minutes, tops 30. But this is the Papillon pattern, which is available in the Etsy shop. But whether a free pattern or a paid pattern, all of my patterns, at least on a go forward, are going to be laid out in a very similar manner. For these are the 20 by 20 blocks. Page 1 has your usual things, and then it also has the instructions for the foundation row. On my foundation rows for these 20 by 20 blocks, they are a woven foundation, as you can see here. That's different than some of the others that you may see, but and I want to go over today how to get that started so that those of you that are relatively new to this will have a solid foundation for going forward with some of the other patterns. This one here, like I said, it's a woven foundation. It's not laid on top or laid underneath in order to get it started. On the pattern, the foundation rows are fully written out as opposed to necessarily following a chart to do so. They all start with a chain 44 for the main color, and then a chain 42 from which we build for the contrast color. From each of those chains, we build our mesh. To give just a very brief explanation of what I'm saying there is we're building two different mesh layers. And those two mesh layers are what we're intermingling together. As you can see, here is the contrast color mesh, which is now sitting in front of that main color mesh. It's just intermingled back and forth in order to create the images that we want to create. It makes her a double layered fabric, which is, relatively dense, but depending on your yarn and your hook, you can really get a good drape to it. So it's really a lovely fabric to create. You have a backside, which sometimes is fully reversible from the front, but the public side and the non-public side is what I'm going to be referring to. The non-public side tends to have an X-ray type of view to it. So in any case, let's get started looking at this. I don't want to take up too much time doing so, but let's continue through our pattern just briefly. So we have our foundation rows, which are marked off with the FR here, fully laid out and explained and written out. Some of our terms are double crochet backwards or double crochet forward. I am assuming in this session that you have a basic understanding of the interlocking crochet, the interlocking formats of crochet. My patterns go on to have the whole pattern fully written out to a chart page, which explains how to read the charts. It also repeats the foundation rows and tells you what to do for every block. And then it'll have on as the last page the chart for the specific pattern. So that's how it's laid out. Today we're only going to deal with the foundation rows. I'm going to get one started because all of this is I'm actually working on a foundation row for another pattern that I'm designing. My husband's actually helping me design right now. And but because I know that all of my 20 by 20 squares begin the same, I can go ahead and get it started. So This is typically my yarn of choice, Special Craft Style Craft Special Aran. It's certainly what I'm using for this blanket. So we always start with the main color. So let me get the beginning of my yarn here, and I'm going to, what we're going to be creating, and keep in mind that this finished block, it actually has the final border put onto it, but you can still see that it has the woven edge on it, which we're going to create momentarily. So I'll just set that back there, and I'll come forward so that we can see, and hopefully you're going to be able to see this clearly. Just slide up here. So we're going to start with the chain 44 because with these patterns, these 20 by 20 blocks, they all start in that same manner, chain 44. I'm going to briefly pause the video so that, and I'm at 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. Okay, so I've chained my 44 stitches. Sorry to take that break out there on you, but I do want to try to keep the video so that you're not sitting there watching me chain 1,000 stitches. Okay, let me move some things on my way. All right. So the first row of the directions say to begin working the yarn in the main color trellis. Is to chain the 44. We could now chain the 42 on the contrast color, but I'm going to go ahead and say that we should make that mesh first for the first foundation row in the main color. So the foundation row, you begin as the instructions state, you begin in the sixth hook loop from the hook. So we look at the back side of these chains, we can see these loops. I do go into these, what some might even call pearl bumps, because that's what they look like in knitting. I use just that one stitch, and the only time I only use the one stitch, the one loop, is on the foundation, so that this chain will lay flat at the bottom. That's whether you do that or not is up to you, but that is my chosen method. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chains from the hook. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick up that one loop, the back side of the chain, that pearl bump. I'm going to double crochet and chain 1. And that's what we're going to do across this chain. Is we're going to, with every double crochet, there's always a chain 1. So it's double crochet, chain 1. That is the intermingled stitch, the stitch that's used for the mesh in virtually all of these interlocking methods. Excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to do a few of them with you right here, and then I'll pause the video and go across to the end. So double crochet, and we'll see the windows forming. The windows are often, the mesh are often referred to as windows, those mesh holes. So we're going to go ahead and create these across. For these blocks that we're doing right now for Papillon and all of the others in the group right in the intermingled mesh pattern set, for the moment, they are all 20 by 20 windows. So when we say 20 by 20, we're not saying 20 stitches by 20 stitches. We're saying 20 windows by 20 windows. And I'll go ahead and do one more of these, and I'll show it to you. Okay. So presently, this is what we get. So we chained 6 we double crocheted in the 6th chain from the loop, from the hook. This is the beginning 6 chains. That counts as a double crochet, chain 1. So your double crochet chain 1, that's 5 times plus the last stitch of the row. So these are the windows, and we're going to be working through those windows throughout the pattern. So I just want you to clearly understand that that's what we're talking about when we talk about a window. Let me go ahead and pause the video, and I'll finish across the row, and I'll come back right towards the end of it. Okay, I'm coming up to my last 4 double crochet chain 1 stitches. So remember, we're skipping a chain at the bottom. It's every other, so 1, 2, and then in that chain, skip a chain, double crochet, chain 1. And this is what's building our base mesh with our main color. Okay. As we come to the end, I want to talk about just setting up for the next step, which is going to be the contrast color, or color B as some might call it, mesh, and what you're going to want to do with this first chain that you're going to intermingle into it, or maybe you're going to intermingle it the other way. I personally prefer to go ahead and do my chain 4 at the end of my rows before turning. So I'm going to do those chain 4 now. Okay. That is also up for discussion, maybe in a different video, but if you find that the edges of your work are too loose or floppy, and so to speak, you could do a chain 3 instead of a chain 4, which I just did. Okay. So again, here are my little wonder clips there, mini wonder clips that I have, and they work wonderfully. Clip off the end so that your work doesn't come undone. Go ahead and set that down. Take a good look at it. Let's count our windows to make sure we have the right number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 windows. Our project is going to be 20 by 20 windows. Okay, so that is done. So the next step in the instructions is to do the 42 chain in the contrast color. And that is going to make one less window than the main color mesh made. So your contrast color mesh is going to end up being one window short of the other. So it's going to sit on the inside of the square. So that's so that the outer part of your square is always going to be the main color, or I should say your block or your project is always going to be the main color. Ignore that because it's the extra border that I've already added on. But so your contrast color is falling right here inside of the main color square. So let's set that guy papillon back up there. And the next step is just go ahead and chain 42, and do not go and start making your mesh on the chain 42. Just go ahead and do that, chain your 42, and we'll come back to set up the contrast color foundation row. Alrighty, here I am. I'm at 40, but I want 41 and I want 42. Okay. So let's draw that loop up, and I'm going to use a magic clip, or whatever we call them there, the little wonder clips, or that I love so much, to hold my end loop in place. Okay, so I don't unravel as I work with this. All right, this is my contrast chain. All right, I'm just going to set this here for a second, and then so I can explain some things here. Okay, let's go back to our main color mesh and lay it in front of us. we're going to make sure that the beginning tail that we had is down here to our left. And I am right-handed. I'm not sure how this works with somebody who's left-handed, but in any case, I am right-handed, so that's the only way I can show this to you. So the beginning tail from our chain is down here to our left. The working loop of our main color is up here to our left, and it's at the top of the chain. I just want to go back to how, remember, I used just the single loop of the beginning chain to form my mesh. I have a nice chained edge there that is actually going to match the finish edge of the entire block. So, and will be whether this is going to be a standalone block or whether it's going to have a final border added onto it, that chain will become very useful. So lay your foundation chain out as such, and then go ahead and, your foundation mesh, your main color foundation mesh out as such. I'm going to go ahead and set my H hook down there, and I'm going to look at this chain. Okay, so we are going to now do the woven border. This border differs per pattern, but is the same for all of my 20 by 20 blocks in the intermingled mesh group. We have to take this chain and we have to weave it into our main color mesh to achieve that even look of the bottom row being perfectly woven and matching up to the top. Let me just quickly show you on the pattern graph how that looks. So to achieve this woven look here, which is identical to the top, we're weaving the contrast color into the main color. Okay, so let's set that up here. And the directions, set this out for you, the written instructions. So what it says is, with the working yarn of the main color trellis to the left, which is what we have here, starting at the right end of the main color trellis, insert the contrast color chain from the back to the front into the first main color window. Okay, that's a lot of words to just say. Take this chain and try not to pull on it and tug on it. You don't want to distort your chains, and come from the back of come from the back to the front into the first main color window. And to be honest with you, I think that might be a mistake. I think we have, yep, that's right. From the back to the front through the first color window. So see how we just did that? Let me bring it to the center and do it again. Okay, so we've got our tail there. So using that tail end, and our working end is to our right over there. We're going to go from the back to the front of this first window. I like to turn this so that the chains look nice and flat on the top. And then, so that's what we did. We followed the directions and we went from the back to the front of the first color window. And then it says to weave the contrast color chain over the second main color chain, under the next main color. It says chain, but we are actually talking about the double crochets here, right? So weave it over and under the double crochet of the mesh, of the main color mesh. So we're just basically going to go in and out of these windows, right? And trying to keep the chain relatively neat within it. Sometimes what I'll do, or most of the time what I'll do, is I'll pull this up so that I have, because I know I'm going to begin in the 6th chain from the loop, from the hook, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That 6th chain has to line up with the second window, because that's where it's going to get worked from. Okay, so those first 6 are going to count for that first stitch, right? So those are behind this first one. That's what's going to come up here behind the first window. So the second double crochet chain one is going to line up in between the two main colors and be right here in that second window. So I try to place my stitch there. You can use a stitch marker or, you know, to like a closing crochet marker to hold that in place, or you know, you can use one of these. I don't even generally need to do that, but I'm going to do that for your sake right now. My sixth chain from the hook is lined up into my second window. It's kind of solidly in place, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to weave. So as you can see, we're lining it up. I'm going to fix this. We'll actually fix it after, maybe. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and weave this down through. I find that I can just under, over, right through those and do a few at once. Okay. Do a few at once. Watch my chain go through it, which is now flipped upside down, but I'll fix it after. And go ahead. So I'm up through this, down, up, up. It's a little fiddly, but it makes for such a nice border that I really love it. And I try to work it into as many of my patterns as I can. So far, you know, they all have that. Maybe some of my ones in the future, you know, won't, but we'll see. Okay, so we're going to end with, okay, so here we are. We're not there yet. This last one came up here, so it has to go down through. Okay, so that's going to go to the back. So every other chain of the contrast color chain is going to get worked the same way we did for our first mesh. This is how we get it bound up. I'm going to just pause the video while I straighten out that this chain is twisted. I just want to flip it so that all of the chains are nicely laid like that, but I don't think you need to sit here and watch me do that. So I'm going to pause for a moment and I'll be back shortly. Okay, there we go. It's all nicely laid out and flat there. I can see that top chain neatly laying there. And if I flip this over, I can see that those bumps that I want to work into for the very first chain are there in the back. Again, when we did this, we clipped this in place so that our sixth chain from the hook fell neatly into the window of the main color mesh. All right, so we're going to work every other loop, and this is actually falling pretty nicely where it's lined up so that every other loop is in the window. It may not always be like that for you initially. Comes with some practice. I'm going to take that loop off. That is the chain I want to work into. So for those of you that are new at this, it may behoove you to go ahead and put, you know, a locking stitch marker in that, just into one of the legs, to mark that that's the stitch you want to go into. You can go full house on that and do that in every other stitch going across if you want, but I think it's going to get pretty busy for you if you do that. Let's start the first row. The foundation row instructions for the contrast color now say to begin in the sixth chain from the hook and double crochet in the back, chain one all the way across to the end, okay, with a double crochet in the back in the very last chain over here. Okay, so we're going to do that in the sixth one and the eighth one and so forth going across. And it's double crochet in the back. Again, I'm assuming you're familiar with some of this terminology, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Chains there. There are 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, our first one is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a few of these, and then I'll pause and we'll get to the back of it. But it's double crochet in the back. So it's hard to see back there, right? So normally for me, I would just kind of turn this a little and then work towards the back. And that is this chain. I am going to check that to make sure it's the right one. And it is. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to double crochet, chain 1. I have it wrapped around twice. Double crochet. And notice that I am not working into that green chain at all. I'm just going in the working with the windows, right? So my next double crochet chain 1 is 2 away. Skip 1, double crochet, chain 1 in the back. And that's the back of, meaning the non-public side of the work, backwards away from you. Okay, don't confuse that. Front and back, and front means forward or facing, back means away from you, away from the side that's facing you. At this point, our public side is actually facing us, and I'm working in the non-public side back here. So I just did another double crochet chain 1, and my next one's going to be in this stitch right here. I did in this one, skip 1, and that's going to be in that one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it. Notice that my hook is backwards. It's in the back, right? But I can't crochet that way. I need to look at what I'm doing. So double crochet, chain 1. You will know if this is right because it's going to set up in a very specific way. So I skipped 1 and now I'm doing double crochet, chain 1 again. Okay, let's just kind of straighten our stuff out here. Okay, there's the one I just worked. Skip 1, the next one's here. Every now and then you might have to kind of fix your chain so that it's staying aligned. And that's the critical piece, is to make sure it all stays lined up, alternating with the main color. So you can see the weave there, and you can see that we're working all of our double crochet chain 1s in backwards, away from us, in the back of, on the non-public side of the work. Okay. So I'm going to do just a couple more of these, and then I'm going to pause the video until we come towards the end. Skip 1. Here's our next one. Skip 1. Here's our next one. So it's when we're coming around these posts that's very easy to end up skipping 2. So be sure you're only skipping 1 chain from the foundation chain, not 2. 1, 2. Okay. Skip 1. There's the chain 1. Skip 1. The next one is right here. It's right there. I don't know if you can see very well what I'm doing as I'm watching the video. Oops, I just did that twice. So it's going right there. Double crochet. Chain 1. Skip 1. Double crochet. chain 1. We will be creating 19 windows with this, as I said earlier. I'm going to pause the video and work these ones here, and I'll come back to you when I'm right here. Okay, I'm coming to the end here. I have 2 more windows actually 3 more stitches to do here. And I'm going to go ahead and do those with you. So I'm going to skip 1, double crochet, chain 1 in the back, backwards, away from me, skip 1, double crochet, sorry about that clip, it's making noise. And then I'm on my last one, which will be my last chain of the row. Skip 1, which is underneath it, and go ahead. At the end, you do not do a double crochet, chain 1, you just double crochet. So double crochet in the last stitch of the chain. Okay. The instructions now say, let me just, before I say double crochet, they do not say to chain 1, but I want to show you some things here. So this is what we look like. We've just woven our contrast color in, and then we worked in the back all the way across. Both of our working yarns are now together at the end of the mesh foundation rows. We are now ready to begin. I number them as row 1 main color and row 1 contrast color. The end of these instructions, though, tell us that we have to turn our work and we have to put our contrast color to the back. Before we do that, I just want you to see how the back of this looks. If you're doing the woven edge of these patterns, every one of them is going to look like this. It's going to have 1, which is your chains that you had at the beginning, and then it's going to have 2 in between each one. Say it, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then it's going to end with the 1. So that if it looks like this, then you've got it right for the foundation rows. Okay, so those are the foundation rows. You can see they're beautifully woven in. They look just like they look on the chart, right? With our looks just like that. Okay, this is the bottom edge. This is the other green edge, and then this contrast color is actually up in here, and your woven light colored lines all represent these. Okay, so we're good to go on that. So let me just put this back up here. All right, so the end of the instructions say to turn the work TWCCB, turn work contrast color to the back. So we were here, we were crocheting. This is where we left it. It says turn the work. And then it says put your contrast color to the back. That would mean to just take it, clip off your end, and hang it to the back. Okay. It's hanging to the back, right? We're now ready to begin row 1 of the directions. You would unclip here, and row 1 of the directions say to chain would be chain 4, and then would begin the directions where we've got the non-public side facing. This video is not intended to go through the directions for the pattern, but rather just to get us set with our foundation rows. But I do want you to see where we're at for that foundation row. So there it is. We've turned our work, we've dropped our contrast color to the back. It's in the back, away from us, not the back of the work, but away from us, backwards. And then you'll begin the instructions for the first row, which likely be a double crochet chain one to the front. So I'll just do that right now just to, so you can see how that gets started. There's my contrast color hanging in the back. I'm going to do a double crochet, chain one, also back, I'm sorry, double crochet, chain one back. And so it begins. My contrast color is hanging in the back through my window, and every one of these 20 by 20 blocks go turn work contrast color to the back. By doing so, you will end up creating that woven edge along the sides to match the bottom. So every one of the contrast color rows end with turn work, contrast color back, and then you keep going. I believe the next stitch here, because I want this white to show, is going to end up being double crochet, chain one, forward. So I get my hook into my main color. I'm going to pull it forward through that window, and so that I don't crochet it all into the contrast color yarn, and I'm going to go ahead and double crochet, chain one, forward. See how I've pulled the main color forward toward me, and I've done my double crochet and chain one, and I'm now intermingling my layers. My white is now showing forward. That's going to be the end of this today. I hope that's helped to flatten your learning curve and on the building the foundation of the intermingled mesh. Wherever you are in the world, I really wish you well. I wish you peace, and I hope that you have a wonderful and blessed day.